Yes, yes, I'd have to go through all the many regrets in my life and the many.
At 89 years old, Woody Allen finally broke his silence. Not with a press release, not with a polished public statement, but through quiet private conversations that are only now starting to surface. People close to the legendary director say he was deeply shaken and strangely surprised by her death, a reaction that caught many observers off guard. After all, this wasn't a distant acquaintance or a passing collaborator. This was someone who had been tied to his life for more than half a century. And that's the question that keeps echoing. Why surprised? They had known each other for 56 years. They made 9 films together. She wasn't just another actress in his career. She was his greatest muse, his fiercest defender, and the one woman who never truly disappeared from his story. Now, in the wake of her passing, what Allen is quietly revealing is starting to reshape everything people thought they understood about their connection. Because this story isn't simply about a director and his actress. It's about a love that was tangled, emotional, and incredibly complicated. Their bond was so real that it couldn't survive as a traditional romance, yet it refused to fade away completely.
Take it seriously?
I took it seriously in the middle of the night when you get a phone call at 4 in the morning saying that you're going to be killed.
For decades, the public saw them through the bright lens of Annie Hall, through clever romantic comedies and the charming image they projected to the world. But behind that image was something far more fragile and human than any screenplay Allen ever wrote. She stood by him during moments when the world turned away. She defended him when doing so came with a heavy personal cost. And now, at 89 years old and facing his own mortality, Allen is finally reflecting on the woman who changed his life, the love he couldn't hold on to, and the quiet regrets that followed him for decades. To understand how it all began, you have to travel back to 1969. Woody Allen was casting his Broadway play, Play It Again. Sam, actress after actress came through the door. Talented, professional, beautiful, but none of them left a lasting impression. Then, Diane Keaton walked in, and suddenly everything shifted. She was just 23 years old, newly arrived from California, wearing clothes that didn't quite match, and speaking in a way that felt loose and unpredictable. Her sentences wandered in odd directions, but somehow everything about her felt honest and alive. Allen later described that first impression by calling her adorable, funny, totally original in style, and real fresh. But what he didn't say publicly, what friends would later reveal, was that she also intimidated him. Diane seemed to embody everything he believed he wasn't. She was bright where he felt dark, optimistic where he was cynical, easygoing where he lived, trapped inside endless analysis and worry. Allen spent his life thinking through every detail of existence. Diane simply lived it. He cast her almost immediately, not only because she fit the role perfectly, but because he suddenly couldn't imagine not seeing her again. Within weeks they were dating, and within months she had moved into his apartment. Friends watching the relationship predicted it wouldn't last long. On paper, they seemed completely mismatched. Allen was the anxious intellectual from Brooklyn who analyzed everything until it fell apart. Diane was the California girl who could say la-di-da and mean it with complete sincerity. He lived inside his thoughts while she lived inside the moment. He collected anxieties while she collected little bursts of joy. And somehow, against all logic, it worked. For a while. Those early years from 1969 to 1971 would later become some of the happiest in Allen's life. Decades later, he admitted privately that when he was with Diane, he felt seen in a way he never had before. Not as Woody Allen the comedian, not as the rising director, and not as the public persona people analyzed. With her, he felt like Alan Konigsberg again, the insecure kid from Brooklyn who always wondered if he was good enough. Diane had a way of looking at him that made him feel understood. They would walk through Central Park for hours, and she would point out simple things, clouds drifting above them, dogs running across the grass, children playing, and somehow turn ordinary moments into something magical. Allen had never really understood that kind of joy before. How could someone simply be happy without dissecting every feeling? Diane tried to teach him that freedom, but the truth is he could never fully learn it. His mind simply wouldn't allow it. Living together slowly revealed the cracks in their relationship. Allen could be controlling in subtle ways that seemed caring on the surface, but weren't. He wanted to know where she was, who she talked to, what she was thinking. Almost without realizing it, he tried to refine her, shaping her into someone more sophisticated and intellectual, more like the women he imagined in his films. But Diane never fought him with anger. That wasn't her style. Instead, she resisted quietly by staying exactly who she was. If he corrected her grammar, she would smile and say the same phrase again. If he suggested serious books, she kept reading her photography magazines. If he criticized her clothes, she showed up wearing something even stranger the next day. It drove him crazy. But somehow it also made him love her even more. Because Diane Keaton was the one thing in Woody Allen's life he couldn't control, couldn't direct, and couldn't reshape into his own vision, and that made her both irresistible and dangerous. Friends from that time remembered their arguments, not loud shouting matches, but calm intellectual battles where Allen would dissect her opinions and choices. Diane would simply look at him and say something like, "You think too much." That simple sentence always hit a nerve because deep down, he knew she was right. Everything finally reached a breaking point in 1971 when Francis Ford Coppola began casting a new film called The Godfather. Through industry connections, Diane received an audition for the role of Kay Corleone, and that opportunity would quietly change everything between them. While Diane was filming The Godfather, something else quietly began unfolding, something Woody Allen would obsess over for years. She started falling for Al Pacino. It didn't happen all at once, and it wasn't obvious to everyone on set, but the spark was there from the beginning. The chemistry audiences later saw on screen wasn't just acting, because the attraction behind the camera was real too. Pacino carried a presence that felt powerful and unpredictable. Where Allen analyzed emotions, Pacino simply lived them. Where Allen turned feelings into long conversations, Pacino reacted with instinct and intensity. And for Diane, who had spent 2 years being gently shaped by Allen's controlling habits, Pacino's energy felt completely different and dangerously exciting. They didn't officially start dating during the film, but the seed had clearly been planted, and Allen sensed it even from thousands of miles away. Friends later said he became strangely fixated on The Godfather while it was still being made. He kept asking mutual acquaintances about the production, about the set, about Diane, and especially about her co-stars. He wasn't shouting accusations or making dramatic scenes, but he was constantly probing for details, trying to piece together what might be happening nearly 3,000 miles away. When Diane finally returned to New York, something about her had clearly changed. She carried herself differently, more confident, more certain, and less willing to automatically accept Allen's opinions. After all, she had just worked with Francis Ford Coppola and shared scenes with actors like Al Pacino and Marlon Brando. She had been part of a massive film that everyone in Hollywood was already talking about. Compared to that world, Allen's smaller intellectual comedies suddenly felt limited. They still tried to keep their relationship going. Diane appeared in his next film and then another, but the balance between them had shifted forever. She wasn't the young actress he had discovered anymore. She wasn't his creative project or his protégé. She was becoming a movie star in her own right, and that was something Allen struggled to accept. Their relationship officially ended in 1972, though people still debate who ended it. Allen later claimed the split was mutual, but many friends say Diane was the one who finally walked away. What everyone agrees on is that she was exhausted. She was tired of being analyzed, tired of being corrected, and tired of feeling like a project instead of a partner. Diane wanted to be loved exactly as she was, not constantly reshaped into someone else. But Allen loved the idea of Diane more than the real person. He adored the character she played in his life, yet the real Diane, messy, spontaneous, emotional, and beautifully unpredictable, made him uneasy. Most relationships would simply end there. Two people break up, time passes, and they slowly move on. But Woody Allen didn't move on that easily. 5 years later, in 1977, he created Annie Hall and insisted that Diane Keaton play the lead role. The film wasn't just inspired by their relationship, it was their relationship placed directly on screen. Scene after scene came straight from real moments they had lived together. The arguments were their real arguments, and the awkward conversations came from their actual memories. Even the name had personal meaning. Annie had been Diane's nickname, and Hall came from her original family name before she became Keaton. Allen wrote the part so specifically for her that no other actress could have played it. He even had her wear her own clothes from their dating years. Those famous outfits with ties, vests, and oversized jackets weren't costumes. They were simply how Diane dressed in real life. In many ways, he was placing their entire relationship in front of the world, every private detail and every strange little moment. And he was asking her to perform it all for an audience of millions. Some critics called it pure genius. Others believed it crossed a line and turned their personal history into public spectacle. Diane herself later described the experience as weird and painful, but she still agreed to do it. Despite the control, the emotional tension, and the way Allen often dissected their relationship, she still trusted him as a director. She believed in his creative vision, and maybe a part of her also wanted to preserve what they once had, even if that memory existed only through the strange lens of his art. The result shocked Hollywood. Annie Hall became a cultural phenomenon. It won Best Picture, Diane won Best Actress, and suddenly the entire world believed it understood their love story. But the truth was far more complicated than the movie suggested. In real life, their breakup had been messy, painful, and unresolved. In the film, however, Allen turned it into something bittersweet and poetic. He reshaped their failure into a thoughtful reflection on love. He softened the pain and rewrote the ending so it felt balanced and almost romantic. In a way, he had rewritten history itself, making it cleaner, more beautiful, and more fitting for his artistic vision. And Diane allowed it to happen. Diane often spoke about Woody Allen with a kind of admiration that never completely faded. She would talk about Woody's genius, Woody's vision, Woody's brilliance, almost like she was describing a force of nature rather than just a former partner. And for Al Pacino, confident as he was, that created a strange emotional tension. Because how do you compete with someone who has already lost? Woody had already lost Diane romantically, which meant there was no obvious rivalry, no direct threat, no traditional competition. Yet, emotionally and creatively, the connection between them still existed in a way Pacino couldn't quite break. Pacino wanted something different from Diane. He wanted marriage, stability, and the kind of commitment that came with full emotional attention. Diane loved him deeply. She would later admit she was mad for him, but she couldn't give him everything he wanted. Some part of her life was still tied to Woody Allen, not romantically, but creatively and emotionally in ways she struggled to explain. That invisible bond quietly complicated many of her relationships, and Pacino felt it even if nobody openly talked about it. Then, decades later, in 2014, everything changed again. Old accusations involving Woody Allen resurfaced in the public conversation. The details shocked many people and quickly reignited one of Hollywood's most painful controversies. Studios, actors, and directors began distancing themselves from Allen almost immediately. People who had once admired his work suddenly avoided speaking about him at all. Award ceremonies stopped recognizing him, and by the time the Me Too movement gained full momentum in 2018, Allen had become a complete outcast in much of Hollywood. Almost everyone stepped away from him during that period. Almost everyone, except Diane Keaton. In January 2018, she posted a message that instantly exploded across the internet. She wrote, "Woody Allen is my friend, and I continue to believe him." It was only 13 words, but those words reshaped the rest of her public life. Critics attacked her online, activists condemned her, and people inside the industry began questioning her judgment. Filmmaker Judd Apatow criticized her publicly, and supporters of Dylan Farrow accused Diane of defending the wrong person. The backlash didn't stay on social media. Articles were written questioning her loyalty, wondering why she had taken that position, and arguing that she had placed herself on the wrong side of history. Projects that once seemed certain quietly disappeared. Roles that might have gone to Diane suddenly went to other actresses. Some directors who once admired her work stopped returning calls. In many ways, she became almost as controversial as Allen himself, but Diane refused to step back. In a 2023 interview, she was asked whether working with Woody Allen had damaged her career. Her response shocked people again. She said proudly that she had no regrets at all. Then, she added a comment about survivor culture that triggered another wave of outrage. Critics demanded apologies and explanations, but Diane never walked back what she said. She didn't release statements or attempt to soften her words. Whether people agreed with her or not, one thing became clear. Her loyalty to Allen was real and unwavering. Allen never asked her to defend him publicly. He never demanded her loyalty or pressured her to take his side. Diane made that choice herself, fully aware of what it might cost. After knowing him for more than 50 years, after seeing both his best moments and his worst, she simply believed him. Maybe she was right, maybe she was wrong, but her loyalty was genuine and deeply personal. By 2024, however, something else was quietly happening behind the scenes. Diane Keaton's health had begun to decline, and she kept the details extremely private. Even many close friends didn't know how serious the situation had become. Those paying attention noticed subtle changes. She looked thinner, more fragile, and she quietly canceled several projects without explanation. But she never made a public announcement and never prepared people for what was coming. Then, on the morning of October 11th, 2025, emergency services were called to her Brentwood home. She was transported to a nearby hospital where doctors later confirmed she had passed away at the age of 79. The announcement shocked Hollywood and stunned many people who had no idea she had been ill. When Woody Allen received the news, people close to him say he was completely speechless. According to friends, he quietly asked, "I didn't even know she was sick. How is that possible?" For someone who had known Diane for 56 years and worked with her 9 times, the realization hit him hard. While he had been dealing with his own isolation and controversies, he hadn't known she was quietly fighting something far more serious. The funeral that followed was small and private, attended only by family and a handful of close friends. Woody Allen arrived looking fragile and exhausted, every bit his 89 years. He brought a framed photograph taken in 1971 on the set of Play It Again, Sam. In the picture, the two of them are laughing together, real laughter, the kind that comes from pure joy rather than performance. People at the service said the moment broke the room's composure. Actress Meryl Streep later told a friend that Allen cried uncontrollably during the ceremony. Not the quiet tears people expected from him, but deep, shaking sobs that shocked everyone present. Woody Allen had always been known for analyzing his emotions rather than showing them. Yet, in that moment, all of his emotional defenses collapsed. Not long afterward, friends discovered something else. Allen had written Diane a long personal letter filled with things he had never said out loud before. The letter contained confessions, regrets, and reflections about their relationship. But there was one heartbreaking detail. He had written it too late. Diane had died before he ever sent it, before she could read his words or hear the things he finally felt ready to say. In his private conversations, Woody Allen has been surprisingly direct about the past. When talking about the women in his life, he doesn't soften the truth anymore. He admitted, "I loved Mia differently, Soon Yi differently, all of them differently, but Diane, I loved her the most, honestly." Then he explained why. "She saw the real me, the insecure, damaged version, and she stayed anyway, until I made it impossible for her to stay. At 89 years old, that realization has become his biggest regret. Friends say he repeats the same thought again and again. I should have just let her be," he tells them. Instead of accepting Diane exactly as she was, he tried to reshape her into someone he imagined she should become. Looking back now, he says he should have been grateful for the miracle of who she already was instead of trying to improve it. When people ask him about the years she defended him publicly, his answer is filled with emotion. "She believed me when nobody else would," he said. "She stood by me when it cost her work, friendships, and reputation." According to him, he never asked her to do that. Diane chose it because loyalty was simply part of her character. She believed what she believed and refused to bend, even when the entire world tried to push her in another direction. Months before her death, they spoke on the phone one last time. The conversation was simple but unforgettable. Diane told him, "I don't regret any of it. The relationship, the films, defending you. I was who I was and you were who you were." That sentence stayed with him. Now Allen says something that reframes everything. Annie Hall wasn't the truth about their relationship. It was his fantasy version of it. The real Diane, he says, was better than any character he ever wrote. And the hardest part of all is knowing he finally understands that just a little too late.